G'day everyone, my name's Jared. I'm the director of Richos Group and one of the electricians here at Richos Electrical. We're here today in sunny Liverpool, New South Wales. It's a beautiful day here today, and why are we here? Well, we're here at my house. So what we're doing here today, so a couple of weeks ago on our Instagram we showed you that we had a point of attachment on fire.
Well, this is fun. So, just evacuated the house because our point of attachment's on fire. So Endeavour Energy's arrived. They're going to try and do what they can to see if they can fix it, otherwise we've got to get an emergency level 2 out to try and fix it temporarily for the night. So that's fun. So, can't get power back on. Can't get power back on at the moment because the cable's not long enough for them to reconnect it. So, we're stuck at the moment, waiting for a level 2.
And it was ours. By the end of the video you end up seeing that it was ours, put on our story that our house was on fire. So we got everyone out of the house, waited for Endeavour Energy to turn up. They isolated power. Fortunately, it was the middle of the night. No one's really going to come out unless for an emergency call out, so we had to sit put. So we sat put, we waited till about 9 AM till we had an electrician on site to replace the mains. We had a level 2 to reconnect the power, but we still had an asbestos switchboard. So what we're going to do today, we're going to disconnect, we're going to remove the asbestos panel, and we're going to replace the enclosure, the service fuses, everything inside the board, bring everything up to date, do some testing, make sure everything's compliant in the house, and put all brand new voltex rcbos inside the board. Come along for the journey, we'll see how it all goes. Thanks everyone. So as you've seen before in the videos on Instagram, at that point of attachment was on fire, so we've replaced all the mains, come down in surface, has to be in heavy duty conduit as per Services of Wales regs, into the switchboard, wire it in, 2 new service fuses as we have 2-phase power. We have our main switch, which I've got to replace the cables from the meters to the main switch so that they're appropriately rated to the right size. These are 10mm, rated 50 amp breaker, so we'll be able to withstand from there to there as it's 16mm to this point here and to here. So it'd be fine. So 16mm, 16 amp I should say, for the power circuits. We have a 10 amp for the lighting circuit, 32, which I'm going to change because it appears to have 2.5s going into a parallel going into a 32 amp breaker, which we're going to change. 16 amp for the strip heater, and then we have a 16 amp aircon, just have an in-wall aircon unit inside, and we have the off-peak hot water unit. Right, so we're going to rip all this out, we're going to replace all these breakers. We've got our little Endeavour warning tag, which can go away now. So we're going to replace all this, replace the asbestos panel because we don't want to have asbestos in the house and we don't want to be drilling any of it. Put all these back together, power it all up and get our level 2 to reconnect once we're done. So he'll be here shortly to isolate, pull all this out, start all over again. So let's go prep the board while we're waiting. So when you're doing a switchboard upgrade, prep work is key. So what we do when we come on site, we set up our table. We've got this from Bunnings, it's a Ryobi, should say, foldable bench. It folds up to about that tall. Right? About the width of the table it folds up to. It all folds into itself. It's perfect for storage in your vans or your utes. If you've got the height, perfect to store it away. That's all you really need. Right? One of the things you're going to need is an earth stake. Our earth stakes in New South Wales are 1.4 metres. They've got to go down 1.2 into the ground. Only reason you'd have to, for my establishment, why you would need to install an earth stake is I've got a water bond. I don't have an earth stake in this property at all. So we've got to put an earth stake in so we have a guaranteed bond to the ground. What else do you need? You need breakers. So we're using voltex breakers here. You're going to need fire seal. Seal up all your holes inside the switchboard. Any holes in the enclosure, back of the board, towards the house, fire seal everything. You're going to need gal spray. All your earths are going to be outside in the weather. They need to be gal sprayed to protect them from the weather so they don't rust. You're going to need a combi drill. I use it for the drill bits. You're going to need drill bits to drill in the back of the board. I use a combi drill because I believe it's got the torque settings and the speeds you need to get through it. A lot of people use an impact drill because they do have the shank on them to go inside an impact drill, but we tend to only use the impact drill to nip up our breakers and then we tighten them with a screwdriver at the end. Labeler. Label your switchboards. Please. Please label your switchboards. It's so irritating when you get to a site, especially a house, because it happens a lot in houses, but especially in commercial as well, is you get to a house and these don't cost that much. They cost as much of a small service call. Just go and buy one. Load them up, keep them in your van, very handy to have. Keep them in your tool bag. If you get one small, you don't have to get one as big as this. Get a small enough one, goes in your tool bag, it makes it easier. Label everything up once you're done. Label the outlet, label the switch, label the appliance, label the board. So easy for when we come back on site when you're not the last person on site. Get a multimeter, make sure everything's dead, don't work live. White marking paint, to mark up the switchboard for your service fuses, your neutral links, black texter to mark up your cables. Do not mark your switchboards with texters, use a labeler. Different array of colours of tapes. Tape measure, because a lot of times, same with this one, this board is not the same size as a standard 600 by 600 meter panel. Volt stick, just for a little bit of reassurance sometimes when you're looking at a few things. We have a orange circ cable stripper. Very handy when you want to cut orange circ. Side cutters, your standard pliers, we use the Marvel crosscuts. We prefer to use them. Long nose when you're trying to pull the cables through the back of the enclosure, and a flat blade and a Phillips head screwdriver. That's the basics of what we sort of need for a board upgrade. Honourable mentions, a hammer. If you're going to use a new meter box, you need to bash out a few holes in the back of the board so you can get your cables in. Could be useful there. Stanley knife. If you're stripping your cable with a Stanley knife, good for you. I can't do it personally. I prefer to use a cable stripper. Bird beaks, as I call them. Some people call them cockies, whatever you want to call them, but bird beaks to cut the big orange cables or your XLPEs for the mains. And conduit cutters if you've got to cut your conduits to come into the board, or for my sake I'm going to be cutting a 20mm conduit to get my earth stake into the ground, because it's going to be all on surface. Obviously, you need cable. So we've got 16mm orange circ that we've just got some scrap around the house that we had from a job. So we're going to use that from the meter to the main switch like we said earlier. And obviously, you need your meter panel. Standard 600 by 600 meter panel. All we got to do is we've got to line up the hinges. The hinges have got to fit in the same spot, but we're going to cut it down this side because there's the one there, it's about a 600 by 500. So we're going to cut about 100mm off it, and then reattach the hinges, drill our new enclosure on. We're going to reuse the old enclosure because there's nothing wrong with it. I know we're not reusing all the RCBOs, but we're trying to make everything unison. We've got multiple different arrays of brands inside the board. Let's try and make it all as one. So we're going to reuse the enclosure, reuse the service fuses because they're brand new when the mains went out. So we're going to reuse all them, reuse as much as we can, but we're going to make everything unison into a new Voltex brand. So as I said before, this meter panel here is not your standard 600 by 600. So from there to there, it's about 510. Top to bottom, probably around the same. It's about 560. So I've already seen the panel. The panel will fit from top to bottom because the meter box is a 600 by 600, so we're fine with that. But I've got to cut the length across. So that's pretty much what we're going to do now. We're going to go prep the meter panel. We're going to get the enclosure ready. We're not going to isolate power because we obviously want power off as minimal as possible, even though it's my own house. I do have people inside who don't want the power off. So we're going to remove all this once we get all the new meter panel done. Replace these. We're going to keep these service fuses. We're not going to replace them. Keep the meters the same. We're going to rip all of this out. Maintain that enclosure. We're going to fire seal the back because there is a big massive hole in the back of the board, which I hate that people do. I get the convenience of bringing everything through in one big hole, but just do individual holes for your cables. Even if it's your RCBOs, your active and neutrals in one hole, that's fine, because it just makes the holes minimal. Right? Don't do one big massive hole, it just makes life harder for everyone else. You're just trying to seal it and make it look compliant. Right? So let's measure this board up. Let's go get that meter panel cut, and let's start getting everything ready, and then we'll isolate power. Tune in. Alright, so we check our measurements of our board again. Our measurements were 510 by 560. Now I said our height was going to be okay, but our width wasn't. Alright, so we want to go from the hinge end because I want to keep these hinge holes. I don't want these hinge holes to change. Alright, so I can probably reuse them. If I can't, then I'll make new ones, but they're already pre-drilled. Let's try and reuse them. Service fuse hole, not really big of a deal because I'm going to make new ones anyway. Alright, so we measure across. We wanted 510. Measure 510 on that point. Come up to the top. We'll measure 510 there because we know this is a square edge. It's a manufactured edge, right? Take a ruler, level, whatever you want to use. Now mine's not going to be long enough to go the whole way, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to just mark between my 2 points. I'll do it this way so you can see actually. So I'm going to get my mark there. I'm going to get my mark there. I'm going to score a line just between those 2 points there. Right. Now I know I've got a straight edge here I can go off. So I can go further back on this line, enough to go to the edge of the panel, line it up nicely. Now, you could just get a bigger ruler, bigger level, which I do have, but it's called laziness. I don't know if you've heard of that. And as the general consensus is a lot of time, electricians are mostly lazy. So, there we go. We've got a straight line. Because it doesn't have to be dead perfect, because it's going to be hidden inside an enclosure. the straighter you make it, the better you are at your work. It's always a good thing, but at the end of the day, no one's going to grab you on standards for it being not straight. So, get that off the edge. We'll get our G-clamps, they come with the bench. The good thing about this one is you can actually put these inside of the table if you really wanted to. It goes in there like that. Push the trigger in, and you can put it in there. And that can become a table saw to hold all your anything you want, a piece of wood or anything like that. But we don't need it for that purpose, so we'll take it out. Out through there, and we're going to hang them off the edge as a typical G-clamp would be used for. Up, clamp it on. Other side, I'm going to push this back a bit because I don't want to be in the way of my saw. We'll clamp that in, and then we get our big friend here, Milwaukee power saw. We love this guy, does a lot for us. As I've said, I moved that one. I've got to move this one now because it's in the way. Move him there, clamp him on there. Always wear your safety glasses in here, after you can't see me, so you don't know if I'm wearing it or not. And as it always has, we love it, because she plays up on us. There we go, we're on now. Line up your line, and just send it down. So it's got a 0 degree gauge at the front of the saw, so you can use that to follow your line there. I like using the blade, so I'll sit behind, I'll watch the blade, obviously stay away from the blower, that's obviously going to spit all the wood back into your face. And just like that, we'll clean off all the dust. Luckily we're on grass and it's also mine, so it doesn't matter too much. Unclamp it, put the clamps away. It's a good thing about these actually go into the table underneath. For now, we're just going to put them underneath, just placing them in there. Clean it off. Well, we have our panel. Right. So our next step will be to mount where we want the service fuses to go. I'm going to have some spare ones, I'm going to mark it so I don't have to take the old ones off until the power's off. So we'll put our service fuses up top, because the way that the metering companies, or manufacturers I should say, metering companies want a whole space for the metering equipment. So what we tend to do in New South Wales is you leave the bottom open, depending on the switchboards manufacturer you supply. So I know B&R boards, their meter panels on top, and you've got a whole enclosure they built on the bottom. But for standard meter panels, like the traditional New South Wales ones, it's just a blank panel. Sometimes they're pre-drilled, sometimes they're not. You put your meters on the bottom, you put your service fuses up in the top left, and then you have your enclosure at the top, just off to the right of the service fuses. Depending on the size of what you're going to do and depending on your preference, but that's usually how it all works. So they usually come in the board, they'll loop down, they'll come up, and the cables will loop down to the meters, back up to the main switch. Alright, so let's get it prepped and ready, then we'll start pulling out our whole board. Alright, so our enclosure we've got spare is the same size as the one that's in the board, and we've got some spare service fuses just to help with marking up. But one thing that you should also invest in, a lot of people have seen it already, most sparkers should have seen it by now, either whether from Europe or even from in Australia when you're buying your own wholesalers, is a marks mate. They're very handy for back of a weatherproof power point, or for my instance, it's going to be inside the back of a service fuse. So I'm going to grab myself a screwdriver. I'm going to open up the holes that I want. One of these service fuses will have an extra feed coming out of it for the off-peak supply. So undo. We undo the bottom side. So 2 on the bottom side, 1 on the top. That's what we're going to do. So we'll pick a top left corner, depending on the way your hinges fall, but it's always away from the hinges, out towards the side of the board, so when the board's open, that's the closest point you've got, right? We line it up straight as you possibly can. At the end of the day, this only punches a hole through the center, so it can be adjusted later as long as you've got your holes for your cables in the right spot. So we want to go on the right, so we'll put that through the right hole, the bottom and the top, and we'll put it through the middle to mark our screw. And when we lift it off, we have our marks there perfectly in place. I'm not sure if you can see, but what I will do is I'll film with this one so you can see it. So as we've done there, so we've got our top entry hole for the cables, our bottom entry hole for cables, and we've got a screw hole. So I'm going to slide this off the table now, so I've got clearances, the edge of the table is here. So now I'm going to drill holes where that's going to be. But for now, I'm going to put that back in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the spare one, I don't need it, roughly in place where that one's going to be. I'm going to put that one in line next to it, okay? So I want to get these pretty much in line, and I can always adjust these after, right? I'll put you down for a second. We'll get our marksman again, because we're going to do two-phase, so we need two different fuses in there. I'm going to punch center, slipped a bit, that's alright, we can adjust later. So I'm going to actually measure where these holes are. We'll punch the top, and punch the bottom, right only, and then for this one we're going to have the off-peak supply come out of it, so we're going to punch the bottom left as well. So now we've got extra. Right, so we have our bottom entry for off-peak, our bottom entry for load of the service fuse, and we've got our line side, and we've got our center hole. Right, and we're going to slide that off because we're going to drill those holes out now. Alright, so we've got two service fuses, so I'm going to measure with a tape measure to make sure that these holes actually line up perfectly. So I've got that one at about 65, and then we've got this one just under 65. Alright, so we might just adjust that one a bit more up. Alright, well, let's start drilling. For this sort of work, you don't need any more than an M12 drill bit. M12 drill, I should say. It doesn't need to be any bigger than that. If anyone tells you any differently, then they're lying to you, because you don't need any more power than M12 or any 12 volt gear. 18 volts is excessive for this sort of stuff. So I'm going to punch this hole a little bit lower, because I know it was about 63. So I punch it a little bit lower, center hole. Perfectly through. Beauty. So we're going to pre-drill these holes. Now the hole I tend to use, size hole for the cable I tend to use is a 10, but sometimes I'll go up to a 12 depending on what room I need. Service fuse, a 10mm hole is normally good enough for a 16mm double insulated cable. So 10, 10.5 is usually a good number, but because we're going to go up in size from a 4.8 that I just used, we're going to go up to an 8.5. And from there we go to the max size that we need. Little tip as well when it comes to drilling 16mm holes for service fuses. If you're going to drill them tight, or at least reasonably tight, have a look at service fuses, the way they're designed, is that they're designed with the screws to be on an angle. Alright, so they angle into the service fuse. So they angle in. So usually do your holes the same way. So if you're going to angle down, angle your holes down when you're trying to feed them in. Right. So let's get this ready to be mounted. Probably start pulling apart the board now, so we can take the service neutral and the consumer's neutral off the board, which the consumer's neutral is actually inside the enclosure on the old board, so it's pretty easy. Put the service neutral back on, remount the meters, put everything back together, wire everything in, and we're good to go. Let's get into it. Alright, so our level 2 has been. We've tested to make sure everything's dead with him. Now, the fun bit. Take all the safety gear off, because lock out and live don't work live, but we were at least testing to make sure everything was dead. These are brand spankers too, so this was nice having these on for once. Alright, so put all that to the side. Let's start ripping all this out. If you're ever not too sure when doing meters, this is more for apprentices. If you're taking this out and your boss has instructed you to take everything out, grab your trusty camera, take a photo. It's an off-peak meter, so it's going to have phase in, neutral, and an off-peak feed out. So you've got to make sure you label everything up as to what it was. So black texture, those black cables, no good. Get your white marker. Just tally marks, that's all you need. 1 is terminal 1, we have terminal 3 being used, and we have terminal 6. So that, you can label it whatever you want, but luckily for me it's a blue cable here, it's been labelled off-peak, so, or OP I should say, so we can leave it as that. We don't have a big deal there. I've noticed that cable has been extended at some point behind the board, so we're just going to replace it anyway, so we know which terminal it goes into. So we'll probably just leave that off-peak in there and we'll just cut the cable. Right. We have a 3-phase meter, so we have terminal 1 for tally 1, terminal 2 is our outgoing for the A-phase terminal, terminal 3 is your outgoing, terminal 4 is your incoming for B-phase, terminal 6 is your outgoing for B-phase, C-phase is incoming is 7, outgoing is 9, and we have a neutral as well being used between 10 and 12. So it's written on the diagram here, we've got 1 and 3 is A, 4 and 6 is B, 7 and 9 is C, 10 and 12 is N. Now, manufacturers and the metering companies actually have these written in their books, so you can download these and you can get these pretty easily. Luckily for us on this one, it's already labelled on the meter, so we're pretty good there. So we've got terminal 1, we're labelled as number 1, we know we're going into C phase, so we'll just call it 2, and we've got 2 and 6 is labelled on the white cables, which we're going to replace anyway, and we've got a 6mm cable being used for a neutral there, because neutrals on meters have to be a minimum 4mm, they don't have to be 16mm. Probably good practice to leave it at 16, but it doesn't need to be. That's just an excess bit of cable you don't need. So if you've got some scrap cable you don't want to take it home or you don't want to use it anywhere else, you can use it for the meter. But if you don't need to use it, choose 4mm, 6mm, perfectly fine. Whatever you've really got in the van, if you've got between 4 and 6mm or anything higher, just use that. Alright, let's start taking everything out of the service fuses. It's going to be hard for me to get that out, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the actual bolts holding the meter on. These are only plastic, so be careful undoing them. So I will replace them to metal. I get why people want to do it, as we said earlier, is to stop them from becoming live, but as it's happened, this one is stripped. Now I need to get pliers and break them off. Now because these are attached to antennas, I'm not going to undo them because I said it's the metering company, so I'm just going to let these meters dangle. They've got cable ties attached to them, so they'll hold its strength in, it won't damage the cables. But I need to undo them and let them dangle so I can take the meter panel off. So we'll leave those meters for now because we're going to undo everything else. We're going to take the service neutrals out. We're going to take the service fuses off the wall, off the panel I should say. We're going to reuse them because there is nothing wrong with them, they're only a couple weeks old. Let's put them down there to the side with the nut and bolt. Off to there, take him out, put him off to the side. Phase rotation on a main switch, so as I said here we've got using A and C on the meter. But we're using B and C on the main switch. It doesn't matter if you don't have any 3-phase appliances. As long as you balance the load across those 2 phases and it's evenly balanced and everything's using all the same amount of current on each phase, it doesn't really matter which way you do it. But if you had a 3-phase appliance, it'd be very important, or even a 2-phase appliance where you've got to use both those phases, it's very important you make sure those phases are in the right rotation. So we will put it as per the meter, so we'll be using A and C rather than B and C, but the electricians who put it in before, that's what they did. So, as I said, it doesn't matter, but it's just best practice to put it in the phase that it comes from. And it also helps if you use the cable colour as well, helps everyone else. We're going to delete all of these cables off here because we are not going to be using them. So what the electrician who installed this originally, not the ones who repaired it, the one who installed this has installed a bus bar, but the only problem is he installed the bus bar is he's used different breakers, which is not ideal when you're using a bus bar. But what he's also done, or she, could be a she, what they've also done, I should say, is they've just ripped out the sections of the bus bar they don't want to use in that phase. So as I said, we're using a B phase and C phase on the main switch. So they've put a bus bar across from C phase and then tails out of B phase. As I said, you could have just got a 3-phase bus bar, not use one of the phases, potentially. Or just not use the bus bar in general because it just creates more trouble for you. Do it this way. You shouldn't be mixing breakers with a bus bar, because the other breakers aren't designed to go with different manufacturers, so you shouldn't really be changing how they've done it. It should come out now. Who's left? Who's holding? Oh, the main switch. Okay. So as you can see there, not exactly a safe option, but they've broken off all the teeth that they don't want to use, and they've just put tape over every single slot. So it's not ideal, and we're not going to do anything similar. We're going to probably use a bus bar, but we may not, because obviously it's only 2 phases being used, and that means we'd have gaps in the breakers where the 3rd phase is meant to be. So we'll see how we're going to do it. We'll figure it out as we go along, eh? Bin that. Alright, that's our feed for our off-peak, which is going to stay in its location, but not inside this board. As I said, breaking things out. Where did I put my texter? It's somewhere. I don't know. It's hiding. Found it. Right, so off-peak, I'll just write on the cables OP. That way we know it's off-peak. Write it twice. Because what will happen, you'll get to the end and you'll cut the cable and you go, oh shoot, what cable is meant to go there? Alright, that comes out of there. 1 breaker at a time. Do not try and do multiple cables at once. Refer back to your switchboard if you have a switchboard cover and it has a schedule on it. Refer back to that as much as you can. If you don't know labels, just tally marks. If you don't know what they are, just tally mark them back in, put them back in the same size, and make sure your breaker is, the cable is rated to the breaker you're going to put it on. So this is a stranded 2.5, so I can put that on a 20 amp breaker, because it's only powering a hot water unit, which is literally about 8 meters that way. So it just goes into the house, runs straight to the hot water unit inside the laundry. Perfectly fine. OP on that one. Alright, our second 16 amp breaker was, according to this, was the aircon. So we're going to test all this anyway. Again, a 2.5mm stranded, which is perfectly fine to use on a 20 amp breaker, but it is only on a 15 amp outlet, so it's perfectly fine to keep it as is. We'll label it AC. Right, the other one was, just had my fiance's family just come past to say hello. Alright, this one was a heater, so I'm just going to put a H on it because this strip heater is non-existent anymore. I'm going to put H on it and I'm going to discontinue it, delete it, as they say. Alright, this one was the fun one, which is on a 32 amp breaker with looks like 2 2.5s in it, which creates a 5mm cable theoretically. Not to my liking. I can't get access to it, but I know which one that is. So until I get all these neutrals and whatnot out, which you might just throw them out now because they're in my way. As fun as it would have been to pull them out one by one, I think we're going to struggle. So let's start ripping some things out the back. Now we've got a hold of the one that I'm struggling with. I'll show you in a second. Back here I've got a whole lot of connectors where the cables have been joined when these RCBOs went in. So originally this would have been fuses on the panel, and thankfully an electrician has come in and repaired it. Whether it was before the rental was being used or for another reason, I'm not sure, and don't really mind. I want to see what size cables he's got here and why he downgraded them. Yeah, so he doesn't have 2.5s in this oven, so I don't know why. Those down there out of the way, I'll show you in a second. So I've got what appears to be a 4mm, 2 4mm, so 25 amps probably would have been okay to put these on. For some reason he's put them as a 2.5 and doubled them up. Because it's 2 4mm, it would have been a 2-phase hot water system, cooktop. There's electric cooktop with hot burners. So it would have been electric, so it would have been 2-phase, it would have been 2-phase supply to the house. You probably could still convert it to 2-phase, knowing there's 4mm cables going to it. But why you would downgrade just for that little bit? Potentially it was whatever he had on the van, but come back and fix it. You know, pride in your work would be good. Let's continue on. There is potential that this place needs a rewire, because I have a suspicious feeling there is VIR cabling in this house. It is an old house. We've got solid core, then we get stranded, then we get solid core, then we get stranded. So I dare say the strandeds are replacement neutrals, because they wouldn't be that size, and it looks like my cable might have been burning in that breaker as well, so we're going to check that. Alright, let's pull out one by one. Let's get these mains out of the way, because they're getting in the way and they're annoying me. Phases are out. the neutrals out. That's the hot water. That is the AC, which is good. Pull this main earth out of the way. These neutrals can go, just in the way and bothering me. That's my off peak. That's my second, that's my third power. So we'll tally mark powers. So we'll go tally for 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You're the cooktop. So we'll say C, T, that one, which is P1. So we'll tally 1, tally 1, tally it twice so we can see it later. This is power 2, tally 2. We yank all these neutrals out so we can chase them elsewhere. And that's my lighting circuit, which is cooking. We're getting hot. Give me 1 second, it's already labelled, so I don't need to label it. And I will show you around this side. I'm about to rip off this whole panel now. You're going to want to come in here in a minute. Let me disconnect the neutral so I can take the neutral off the wall. So you can stay. We're going to need side cutters now. Start cutting some cable ties. Alright. I want to cut that one. So main cable tie holding everything on. Alright, now that's loose. Sweet. So we can swing him right around now. Shows how much tension the cables get put on. Alright, so we want to rip out these meters. So we do want to keep a lot of these cables because they're already at length and we don't really need to cut them any shorter. The white ones are going to go because we're going to replace them. Chunky. The blue one's going to go because that's our off-peak cable and we're going to make that longer because we don't want this nonsense. There's no need for that inside a switchboard. Alright. These mains are brand new, so we're not going to replace them for no absolute reason. The main neutral, so the neutral bar, nothing wrong with the neutral bar, so we're going to keep it. Let's grab a hold of this nut. Can't get it without, we need pliers. Hope everyone's enjoying this though. If you are, leave us a comment. We do like them and we do respond sometimes. If they're negative, a lot of time we just love heart reaction. We might comment on them. It's not a big comment, but if you do comment, it helps our algorithm. So if you do want to be negative, by all means be negative. Prefer you didn't. But if you have to, you have to. You know, it's a free world. You're allowed to do what you want. Yeah, have a comment, like the video. If you want to see more content like this, because we're going to bring out more, subscribe. Subscribe to our videos. And we'll see more videos like this, and we'll try and be as instructional as we can, legally, because we obviously don't want to give this away to anyone. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of apprentices out there, including myself, who needed it at the time, wanted to see a lot of this stuff, and they resorted to YouTube for different things. I actually did my back-in when I was an apprentice, fell off a roof, and I resorted to YouTube for a lot of the sparkies I used to watch. It was all UK based, so you couldn't really reference a lot of it, but it was just a lot of it just being particular about your work, which was standing out a lot. So I used a lot of that to be neat with my work, because I was watching a lot of the UK sparkies with how neat they had to make their work. But like I said, a lot more YouTubers in Australia are coming out, which is good to see, but a lot of them are frowned upon to explain what they're doing or do it and show how to do it, because they don't want it to be an instructional video. But at the end of the day, if someone wants to learn how to do it, they're going to figure it out. So you're better off giving them a little bit of advice with safety, in my opinion, because they're going to figure it out anyway, or they're going to give it a go. I think this sort of stuff, most people won't touch it. They might replace a fuse wire. That's not new. You know, they might replace a breaker. Again, it's not new. It's been happening many times. My own uncle did it. You know, so it's one of those things where you're not going to stop the idiots from doing it. So the best thing is to try and at least make sure they don't kill themselves doing it. That'd be the idea, in my opinion. Whether that's right or wrong, it's up for debate. I'm just taking the rest of the cables out of the meters so I can remove them. What I had to do before was just break off the plastic nuts because they wouldn't want to come off. So that's the off-peak meter. So you want to take that cable tie out because it's holding it to the switchboard. Snippy. What we'll do is we'll take that lid off the top. Let's take this lid off. Because the wind's scaring me a bit. I'm going to lose my head. As much as that would be funny for YouTube, not funny for me. Off-peak meter on top of the switchboard. Undo, pull off the wall, we lift it up, and it comes away. And put him up there, out of the way, so they don't disturb anyone. And that is pretty much it, ready to come undone. You undo those 4 nuts there, 2 on the bottom hinge, 2 on the top hinge, undo them, whole panel will come away, dispose of it safely. There might be a main earth actually. I just read a little note on the switchboard then. There might be a main earth somewhere. It does say main earth 2 meters somewhere. Which goes against our standards because we're not allowed to block labels. Right, someone didn't pay attention to that when they installed that enclosure. That's okay, we'll forgive him. There's only so much you can do. And this is probably going to fall and hit me in the fingers. Because asbestos panels, if you've never really held one, they have a bit of weight to them. And this one is not helping me because it's going to fall off the board in a minute. I don't know how I'm going to get that without it dropping. Huzzah! 1, 2, 3. Done deal. And there you go. That's how you potentially safely remove it without disturbing it. So there's probably safer ways to do it. You probably should have gloves on when you're using it. But I'm outside. It's exposed to the atmosphere. There's less chance of me actually getting pinned by that with asbestos. So handling asbestos, use a mask. It's probably the safest way to do it. I said, while you're outside not drilling it, it's probably going to be okay just to pull it off the wall like that. So, what I was going to show you was behind, but I guess I can just show you here now. Let's take you off here so I don't have to carry a tripod around. So, standard domestic switchboard from 1950s, 1960s. So we ran our mains in, so that's all just coming up through a conduit, surface mounted as neat as possible. It's an orange conduit on the outside of a cream house. It's not going to look the best, but that's the joys of painting, isn't it? So, we've got our lower cables, all bare earths. They're all bonded here. They've all been sleeved, so I'm not really fussed about replacing them or trying to sleeve them better. They're all sleeved there nicely. They're all soldered together. It's all perfectly fine. We have a switchboard bond down here, which we need to make sure it's at least a 6mm cable, which if it's not, when we run the new main earth to the ground, we're going to run it up and bond it onto there and then take it to the MEN link inside the consumer's neutral. So we have our neutral, we have our 2 actives, we have this cable here to get rid of, which are our old consumer's mains. So we'll get rid of that. So that was our MEN link, which said it's probably a 4mm at most. We need to change that to at least a 6, because this 4mm can be an equipotential bond. A main earth needs to be 6mm minimum. And your switchboard bond has to be, if it's double insulated, which these are, so these are double insulated all the way to the service fuses, you're allowed to have a minimum of 6mm cable, because a 16mm cable requires a 6mm earth depending on the run and all of your calculations you've got to do. Alright, so we'll run a 6mm earth down to the earth stake, up to the earth bond, link it to the earth bond here, the main earth bond, and then we'll take a 6mm cable to the MEN link. Scratch that, we will not actually, because the MEN link has to be the same size as a neutral conductor, which we'll make sure. So we'll have a 16mm link, which we had there originally, between the service neutral and the main earth. And we'll sleeve it as an earth. Sweet. Alright, let's get the new panel ready. Put it up to the hinges, hopefully it fits in the same holes. If it doesn't, we pre-drill the holes, put it up on the panel, then we'll take that enclosure off and put it on top of the new switchboard. Alright, let's get into it. Try this again. Right, I've got my hinge out here. I've got my pre-drill hole, at least one of them. I'll grab the bottom hinge, I'll try and line it up. I might even just throw a nut on this because it keeps falling and it's annoying me. Stay there for a second. That'll at least hold that on. Into there. We'll line the hinges up with the end of the panel as perfectly as we can. I left my texter over at the table. Uno memento. Now we say plan and prepare. Make sure you got everything near you so you don't have to go walking away. Alright, third time around, hold that there in place, onto the hinge, mark a hole, and mark a third hole, and we can undo this hinge. We know our holes are now good. Final test will be shutting the panel. Let's come back over here, shall we? Alright, let's drill our holes. You can see just how close we were. We nearly had it right. No. Our holes are drilled. Our service fuse holes are drilled. I think you're in the right spot. Are you? Yeah, you're fine. Alright, back in our original hole. Get our trusty screwdriver. Screw it up. Nuts on, nuts off. Tighten nuts up. Tighten nuts up. And there we go. We have a new meter panel. So, said the real test was to seeing if it's going to close. So let's push everything back inside the switchboard for now. Let's see if we can get this meter panel to shut properly. Push the hinge in. A little bit tight, but I'd rather tight than loose. Sub-circuits don't want to go in. Once we take the arm out, and that will shut perfectly. Helps when you got stuff on it so you can actually open the panel. Now it's going to be a struggle to get it open. Ow! Oh dear. There we go. There we go. Yeah, good. Alright. Yeah, a little bit of the corner. We can probably just chop a bit of that off. That's not a big deal. It's not really affecting anything. It's only hurting the panel. Alright. So, what that means is that we can now fit our meters, our service fuses, which are right here, which we prepared earlier. This is the one that has the off-peak supply. You want to go perfect. Get your second one. You're all on the right hand side, so we spin it around to the right hand side. I always tend to go to the right, that way it's away from the end of the panel and it's away from the door, so it doesn't catch any sharp metal or anything like that as it's swinging open and closed. Yep. Tighten that as tight as you can. Tighten that as tight as you can. And there you go, there's the service fuses done. Now what I tend to do when we're doing a board upgrade list, because I want the level 2 to be in and out as quickly as possible, is I get service fuses done, tails over service fuses to the meters, I should say. Once the meters are done, to the main switch. Even then, just from to the meters, so that they have tails at the meters, so that way level 2 can come and tag, power on, and then we can finish everything off and put the service fuses back in. But it all comes down to prep and seeing how quickly you can work. So let's get our service neutral mounted on the back. Let's get the enclosure mounted, meters mounted, and get our cables in place. Let's go. Tip for apprentices if you're mounting meters for your electrician. He should be telling you how to do this, but when you're mounting the meters, put the covers on so you can figure out your height. Amount of times I've done it, even as a tradesman, in a hurry, trying to put it on, and then you realise, oh crap, I've put the meter on and then it's too low. Right? So look at where it's got to go and take the cover off. Make sure you've got enough room to bring your cables in as well, because obviously the cables, the lower they go, the harder they are to bend. So if you have to, if you've got space, bring it up a little bit higher. Right? So I know I'm good there. I'll grab my trusty marks, mate. Give it a bit of a shake before I go. Put it in the hole. Helps if my switchboard stays in place. That doesn't want to for me. Always do this on the ground if you can, like on a board or on the ground when you're trying to work, because trying to do this as the board's flapping, turning around as you're doing it makes it very hard. I'm going to use the actual board itself, I'll be propped up against the thing. That way I can actually push against it. Right. I'm happy with that positioning. It's reasonably straight. Mark 1. Mark 2. Take it away. We've got 2 marks perfectly right there. Right. So the way these hang on the back, a lot of times with any meter, is I have a center hook. So it hooks on. Once it's hooked on, then you've got your 2 bottom holes to screw onto. Right. So I tend to just line that up on its side, like that. So you can always measure center between those 2 holes because they should be center. They should have a center. They should be machined so that is perfectly center between those 2 holes. So you can mark that up. You can measure the height, and you can just bang a center hole in. Because a lot of times you can't see that. But with these ones, the good thing about it is you can see through the top. There's a spot there where that bolt will sit in there like that. Right, so you usually can see it. So you can probably line these up, these ones like that. Alright, we can put them back on its position. Look down and make sure your holes are lined up. That's good on my mark there. On my mark there, double check your first one again, put it back. We're good. And what you can do is you can grab your texter, just right at the top. Easiest thing to do is you can just measure between there and there where you want your bolt to go. Put that down there just out of the way so it's not tread on or damaged. We'll get our tape measure. Down from there to there. So when you're using the end of a tape measure, it's designed to move backwards and forwards to account for if you're pushing it up against a wall, so it'll account for that. If you pull away, it's meant to account for that distance as well of the actual spade on the end of it holding it. But I tend to just go, just with some things with rulers that I had when I was an apprentice, use the 100mm mark. Start at 100mm because you can see it then. It's not going to have any play in it or any movement. And that's telling me at 15mm is where I want that bolt to be. So you want to go 15mm, make a mark. And as long as that is center of your mark there, it's a little bit off. It's a little bit off, it won't hurt. Mark that mark there. We go get our drill. We drill that hole. But you want to drill this hole first, alright? Just in case the bottom ones don't work out. Check behind, make sure there's no cables in the way. Drill that one. We'll hang our bolts. That's our main bolt to hang it with. It's got to sit out a bit, so obviously it can hang on like a picture hook. Hangs on, then we'll drill those bottom ones out and do the same thing for the other meter. Alright, so we're back with some bolts. Let's say. Hopefully they focus on me. They don't want to. So we've got some bolts that we use. We tend to use the big headed ones. So that way they've got a bigger grab on them. So with a nut and a washer on the behind to hold the nut in place. Punch that through there. Hang our meter onto the nut, the bolt that's there. And our washer and our nut. Washer on the bolt. That's fallen off. Finger tight as tight as you can. Excuse me. Oh dear. That's still lined up, that's still lined up, so we can just shift that to the side. Again, check behind. No, there's no cables there, which there shouldn't be, so I'm putting it on there. So we just have to use just slightly longer nuts, that's all. So, longer bolts, I should say. Longer bolts to get through the meter all the way to the back. So finger tight, that's 1 meter mounted. Easy, not that difficult. Right. Same thing, same procedure. Which, we don't need to show you this bit because we've done it with one. Same procedure with the second one. So we'll catch up with you when we're ready to mount the service neutral and the enclosure. Alright, second meter's in. Now, time to mount the enclosure, then we're going to mount the service neutral. So, as I said, we don't want to go too close to this in case we ever put 3-phase power in, so we want to go a bit further over. So we want to allow enough room for another service fuse to go in, which that gives us plenty of clearance. Even if it went tight to the other service fuse, that's still plenty of room. We want to grab our texter, which we didn't pick up on the floor in the first place. Alright, grab our texter. We want to get pretty close to level. There's no point using a level on a switchboard because 9 times out of 10 the door doesn't swing level. So get it close to the level point on the switchboard. So use your switchboard to your advantage, push it up against the frame, put it in. We already have the original holes. Knock, 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 knock all 4 corners. And how good is that? None of them even appeared. That's fantastic. Mark's made it is. Alright, let's try this again. For some reason they didn't pop through. Maybe that texture wasn't long enough. Alright, pressure on it again. Give the marksman a shake. Punch 1, punch 2, punch 3, punch 4. Take it off. We have our 4 holes. Ready to drill. Same thing again as the meters. Drill your 4 holes. There's definitely nothing there because there's nothing been put on your board yet. 4. Done deal. Alright. Now your neutral. Alright. On the back of the switchboard. Alright, we know we've got 4 holes here. We don't want to be in that vicinity. We don't want to be in this vicinity. And we don't want to be in this vicinity. So we've got this space here in the middle. Now, looking at the front, we've got a panel here. There's room here. And there's room here. And there's potentially to be room around here. Right? For future, I've seen it too many times. For future, try and put the neutral link somewhere it's not going to be in the way of another enclosure to go in. A lot of times you don't want to place the whole enclosure. Customers don't want to replace the whole thing. So you can't fit anything in if the neutral link screws are coming through the back of the board into this side and you can't put an enclosure there. So a lot of enclosures will get put sideways or even fit in that little spot there or even down here where maybe a power point will go in. So try not to put it in those 3 locations. Here, you're not going to fit anything right there. That's where we're going to put it. Where these 3 holes here, we're going to put it right there. So, there. Mount that in that spot. Give the marksman a shake. Punch 2. Take it away. Drill our screw holes. Put a bolt through. Put your washer on. Screw your nut on. Alright, neutral links on. We'll eventually break them off so they're not so sticking out so much. Same with the screws on the back. Neutral links in. That means now we can get our nuts and bolts for the enclosure. Nip them up, all done. Easy as that. Enclosure, meters, service neutral link, done. Now, the main thing you got to do is drill your holes where your cables are going to go in, bottom of the meters, top of the main switch, each service fuse, put your cables in. That's what we're going to start doing now. Start putting everything in. That's all the fun stuff. And then once it's all hooked up, then we can get our level 2 in to connect our power back at the street. And once it's all connected, then we can have some fun and start testing everything, putting all the circuits back in. Alright, our cables are too short here now, so we're going to make them longer.